Hello, welcome. Let me set up my camera a little bit better here. It's Christina, and today I wanted to share with you something kind of near and dear to my heart. So today, I know many of you probably know, maybe some of you don't know, and hopefully I can do this without crying. Hi Courtney, welcome. So today let me look at the date, 1977. So in 1977, on this date, I was officially adopted. Many of you may or may not know, I was born in Brazil and I was adopted to America by American citizens. So I just wanted to share this, there's so much to this story. So I just wanted to share kind of the beginning of it, and then, maybe in a few weeks I can keep sharing about my story. But let me grab my notes so that I don't get sidetracked. Okay, so my parents, Leroy and Nancy Roberts, let me show you a picture of them. They are like angels. So this is my mom. It's kind of hard to see. I had to pull out my wedding book. But this is my mom. Like, how cute is she? Hi, Rake Maker. This is my mom. She was 27 when she married my dad. And this is my dad here. My dad is a giant man, but he has a giant heart. He is about 6'6.5" and like, I don't know, 350. So we played he played football all through high school. And he actually earned 3 full-ride scholarships. Sorry, my camera's being funky. 3 full-ride scholarships to college, but turned them all down so that he could help support his family. So these two got married when they were 25 and 27, and then they discovered that they were not able to have kids. And so they decided to try and start adopting in the United States. And so they tried that route for about 5 years, and just nothing was coming through. And so my dad owned a waterbed shooting company, and one of his employers had gone to Brazil and came back, and like 2 weeks later had a baby. And they were like, my dad was like, what the heck? How did you like get a baby? And she said, oh, when we went to Brazil, they're like, people are poor and struggling and they're just like handing them out down there. You should go down there. So my dad talked to my mom and was like, I have this totally crazy idea, but how do you feel about flying off to Brazil and let's go find some babies? And so my mom said, okay, because they wanted babies so bad. So they started out by writing a letter to, for those of you that may know, President Faust, James E. Faust. They wrote a letter to him because he was the mission president at that time in Brazil. So they wrote him a letter like, we're thinking about coming down and maybe you could help us, locate some children if you know some families that, need help with their children, and we could adopt them and bring them back. So they wrote the letter and there was no response. So my parents were like, well, we want kids, so we are flying to Brazil. So they flew to Brazil. And the reason why President Faust did not get the letter in the mission home is because he was ending his mission. So he was going around the field to say, goodbye to the families that he met and stuff. So he was not around to even get the letter. By the time he got the letter, my parents were already there. And so he read the letter and he was kind of concerned, like, oh, I feel like this might not be a good idea, that they might get to the border or customs, and then they're going to have to give the kids back, and that's just going to be an emotional thing. Like, I don't know if it's a good idea. I've never heard about doing something like this. So he called the phone number that my dad left, and my grandma answered and kind of explained what he thought. And she was like, well, they're already there. Like, they're literally there in Brazil right now. They're actively looking for children. So they ended up connecting with President Faust, and President Faust gave them the number of the attorney in Brazil that did all the visas and paperwork for the missionaries down there. So that's who my parents used to do the adoption processing paperwork to make it all legal and on the up and up, is through President Faust. So now the journey begins, and they came across a baby, and they were able to adopt him and then bring him back to the United States. And so that's my brother Clay. And so they came back with him. And then about 6 months later, they got a phone call that, you know, there's this brown-haired, brown-eyed little girl that, you know, could use an adoption home situation. I know it's not a baby. I know she's about 2.5. If that's something you're not interested in, you know, we're not going to feel bad, but, you know, she's here if that's something you want. And so they said yes. And they took off again to go get me. And so they went and they got me. And they decided, you know, it was such a good experience with the first one, you know, while we're there, let's take a little bit more time and like get a whole bunch of babies. So, and then my aunt was like, you know, my dad's sister was like, you know, we're kind of having a hard time, like, having more babies, so like pick one up for me. So anyway, they went down and they got me, and they didn't really know much about my history or, you know, why I was being put up for adoption. They just knew that like something had happened to, you know, my mom, and that I needed to be placed for adoption. So when they got me, I mean, the exchange literally was at like a Walgreens down there. Like, that's how it happened. Like, you know, my birth dad brought me into the Walgreens lady, the pharmacy lady, and then he left, and then my adoptive dad came in, and the pharmacy lady handed me to my adoptive dad, and then he left, and that was it. That's how it happened. So my dad says when they got me that I was really, really tiny for 2.5, like really tiny. And he just thought, you know, again, he's like 6'6", 350. He's in Brazil where, you know, Brazilians are not really big people. You know, they're kind of small, you know, people. So he just sort of figured maybe Christina's really tiny because that's the country we're in and that's just the way it's going to be. And she's probably just going to be a little petite little girl. Oh, thank you. So, they discovered that even though I was 2.5, I was not walking, and I was sort of just crawling, and I wasn't really eating. And so they were like, oh dear. So they said when I was in the hotel that I only ate tomatoes and rice, that's all that I ate, and that I did not like talk at all. And that, you know, I didn't walk. So by 2.5, like, I should be walking. And so, you know, they're in this hotel, and, you know, people start to understand, like, oh, there's this American couple that's here that's looking for babies to adopt. So, and they're there for like 4 or 6 weeks or whatnot. So what happened is the maids would finish their shift cleaning, and they would come up to my parents' room, and they would come get me. And the maids, the cleaning ladies, would take me from one end of the hall and re-taught me how to walk. And when I got to the end of the hall, then they would put me up in the elevator, and then they would try and get me to walk down the other hall and then bring me down the elevator. And so just that motion over and over and over again, I was able to learn how to walk again. And so yay for them, for kind-hearted cleaning ladies in Brazil to reteach me how to walk again. Okay, so they get me, and they get a knock on the door, and a couple comes in, and they said, you know, we understand you're the American couple that's looking for kids to adopt. And, you know, my dad's like, okay. And they said, we have a child that's in the hospital. If you know, he's really struggling, we're not sure if he's gonna live. If you wanna look at him, and, you know, if you wanna adopt him, we can't afford to take care of him in the hospital anymore. So my dad said, okay, Nancy, let me go look and see what we're dealing with before I bring you in. So my dad went, and they talked to my dad and said that he had problems swallowing or like sucking from a bottle, and so he wasn't gaining weight. That night my mom had a dream about how, you know, an alternative way to feed him, and they went back and it ended up working, and so kind of saved his life. And so my dad said, okay, great, well, we can give this one to my sister. My mom was like, over my dead body, like I totally like saved his life, like that one is mine. So my dad said, okay, well, Nancy, like you can't fall in love with like every baby that I bring here, like you know, this is like now we have 2 and we have the one at home, you know. So then they found another baby girl, and then they actually ended up finding another boy, which that's who they gave to my dad's sister so that she could have a child. So here they are now, following my notes. House, clay, brown hair, walks, security. Okay, so now they've got a 2.5-year-old. They have like a 6-month-old, a 4-month-old, and a 2-month-old. And so they're walking through the airport. Again, my dad's like 6'6", 300 pounds, does not look anything Brazilian. Then we've got my mom, and then they've got like 8 weeks of luggage behind them and like 4 babies. So my dad's holding 2 kids, and my mom's holding 2 kids, and they actually had like, I think kind of like a helper, you know, with the luggage and stuff. And so they're just like walking through security, like, I hope we don't get like pulled over in security, like let's just like totally blend in here, which was impossible. So my dad says that the custom agents came up right to my parents, and they were like, all of you with us. And my parents thought, okay, well, this is what President Faust was talking about. This is, you know, this is the point where we have to give all these kids back, and we just need to prepare ourselves for that. So they ended up going in a room, and the custom agents looked at all their passports, and I have mine. This was my passport, and so this is like the youngest photo I have of myself, right here. So that's like the youngest, if you can see it, that's the youngest photo I have of myself, right there. A little brown-haired, brown-eyed little girl. So we all had our green passports, and they just stamped them all and put us on a plane. And just like that, they were put on a plane. So we're all put on a plane, and my dad tells a story that like it was like planes forever. So they go from the southern part of Brazil. So I was born in the really southern part of Brazil. So like all my siblings that are adopted were all adopted from different families. So none of us are blood related, but we're all adopted, so if that makes sense. So we're all from the same state, but we're all from different cities. So they flew from southern Brazil up to Sao Paulo, then from Sao Paulo to Florida, then from Florida to Canada, then from Canada back to Florida, and then from Florida clear over to Mexico. It was like, you know, it was just one plane after the next. There's no stop. They just kept going and going and going. So they get to Mexico, and my parents, totally funny story, my parents call 4 of their relatives, and they say, get in your car, get in your car, go buy a car seat, and meet us in Tijuana across the border. And we're gonna give you each a kid, and then you drive 1 kid across the border. I don't know if that was legal, but that's what we did. So my parents land, and they have 4 family relatives, you know, in their own cars. They each have a car seat, and they give 1 child to each relative in their car. And the car, they get in the car, and the cars go across the border because it looks less suspicious than like my parents with like 8 weeks of luggage and 4 kids in the car coming through Tijuana. So that is how I came to America. So let's see. So yeah, so pretty much my life story could be a movie. I get told that all the time, that like I should write a book, but that seems way too daunting. And I just feel like a movie would be easier. But anyway, this is an attempt to just kind of share my story, the little bits and pieces of it, so that you can get to know me. So my parents went from no kids for 5 years to a 2.5-year-old, a 6-month-old, a 4-month-old, and a 2-week-old in 6 months. So my mom said she didn't go anywhere for like 2 years, that my dad ran his business and he did the grocery shopping and he did the dry cleaning and he did all the errands, and that back then my mom, they did cloth diapers because they didn't have like throwaway diapers. They had cloth diapers. So there was a service that would come and get all my mom's, kind of washed the best she could cloth diapers and give her a whole stack of new clean diapers. And so that was the service she used. And he would like look in my parents' van and see like 4 car seats, and he was just like, they are angels. Those 2 are angels. They're going straight to heaven. Isn't that crazy? You could see your husband doing that. I know, like, that's my question, is like, how far would you go to like have kids? I mean, for 5 years not to have kids, like how far would you go to have kids? And so my mom didn't do anything for 2 years, and she definitely had help from her mom and my dad's mom, and lots of family to help her. And then 10 years later, my mom answers the phone, and then like she starts crying. So she starts crying, and we're like, what's wrong? And then she hangs up. She's like, there's a little boy that is in Brazil that is put up for adoption, and so the attorney called and wanted to know if we wanted it. And we were like, what? And I was 10 at the time, so I was 10, and then we had 3 8-year-olds, and we were like, what? That's crazy. And so they went again. 10 years later, they went down and got my brother Russell. And then while they were there, they decided, well, we don't want to bring him back and raise him by himself. We should have somebody else with him. So they found out about a girl there too. So then they came back, and they had basically a 4-month-old and a 2-month-old. So my mom did it all over again, along with like 3 8-year-olds and a 10-year-old. So that's kind of my life story. I know when growing up, like, people always say like, oh, when did you find out when you were adopted? Like, that's not how my parents wanted to do it, because there were 6 of us that were adopted. So they just always talked about it. And I guess you have to when you're at the doctor's, and the doctor's like, wait, you 3 are 8 and you're 10, but none of you even look like each other. Like, people are trying to figure out how this all worked. And so it was like, oh, they're all adopted, And so it was just always talked about because it was such a fascinating story. And so it wasn't like just one day it clicked, like, oh, I guess I'm adopted. Like, it was just, we're adopted. It is what it is. And we're from Brazil. And the funny thing is, my parents, super shy. Like, if you know my parents, leave some comments about my parents, if you know them at all. Super shy, super shy. Like, they just kind of keep to themselves, live really simple. Yeah, it totally does take someone special. And so totally shy. And then they adopt these 6 kids from Brazil who are like crazy. We're loud, we're fun loving, we like to be, the party starts at 9 o'clock at night. And which is totally opposite from my parents. So that was kind of new for them. But anyway, so yeah, we're all adopted, and none of us look like each other. It'd be funny when people would say, oh yeah, like, I can totally tell he's yours. Like, you look just like, you just look like your dad. And we're like, not really. He's totally our adopted dad, but thank you. Oh, Chelsea's so sweet. Yeah, my parents are like, I wanted to do this with my parents, but there's like no way my parents would get on camera, like at all. It would never get on camera, just because it's just not their thing. So I just thought, well, this is a way for me to share it. So these are my parents, my adoptive parents, and what they did to have their own family. And it's just something that I'm always going to be grateful for. And, sheesh, it's just something I'm always going to be grateful for. And, the devotion they had towards wanting their own family so bad. And the lengths that they went to get a family. And I know a lot of people ask, like, well, did you want to know, like, what happened? Or, like, why were you adopted? And, like, growing up, it wasn't really, like, a question I had until I got a little bit older. And then I was like, well, it would be kind of interesting to find out, you know, like, where I came from and all that stuff. And my parents just knew I had siblings. They didn't know how many or, like, you know, girls or boys. They just knew that something happened to my mom. She'd passed away and that I needed to be adopted. So that's all that, you know, that's the only history I had. So then fast forward and I meet John and we get married, and one of his promises to me was within the first 10 years of our marriage that he would take me back to Brazil to just kind of see where I came from and, like, what life would have been like had I stayed there. And, you know, just to kind of, like, close that chapter. So that's a whole nother video that I will do later, because this was emotional enough. Anyway, so I'm just curious, do you know people that have adopted, and what lengths would you go to have your own family? And if you do know my parents, just leave a comment for them so that they can see this. Because they live such quiet lives. I don't think they get to hear enough how amazing they are. And I know for me, I am incredibly grateful that they went down to get this little brown-haired, brown-eyed girl. And despite not knowing what they were working with, that they went anyway. And that they loved me like I was one of theirs. And when I did go back, I saw what my life would have been like, and it was completely different than how I grew up. And I'm so grateful that they adopted me and brought me to the United States, and that I was raised by two happy, healthy parents that had an insane amount of love, and went out of their way to serve us every day, and that they value family so much that they would hop on a plane and go clear to Brazil to just start looking. And I love the story about my dad. He said I would walk around and all the little boys, they would shine shoes just to make money. These poor little kids would shine shoes to make money. So his shoes were always sparkly. And he would take a bunch of them and buy them ice cream, like every day. And bought them watches. Because they were so little and he was so big. And he says another story is we were at the hotel so long, and they kept ordering flan in their hotel room, and they ordered it so much that the head kitchen chef invited my dad to come down in the hotel to learn how to make flan. So that's how we learned how to make it. And I'll end with this funny story. He, when they got down to Brazil, it was, you know, it's February. So right now, it's Carnival Week in Brazil. If you don't know what Carnival Week is, it's kind of like Mardi Gras here, times 10. So he says that they got to the hotel, got things settled, and he opened up the hotel curtains, and it was like carnival going on down in the streets. My dad was like, I'm not sure what's happening here. So he like closed the curtains. He told my mom, just like, don't look outside. It's a little kind of crazy out there right now. It must be some sort of weird parade or something. Then like the next morning he goes out, like opens the curtains, and like carnival is still going in Brazil. So he's like, what the heck? Must be a 2-day thing. You know, close the curtains. And then by day 3, he opens it again, and he's like, how long is this parade? Like, are we sure we want to adopt people from Brazil? Like, what did we get ourselves into? So that's pretty much how we all are, is kind of crazy. But anyway, so I'll end this kind of long video, but I just wanted to share a little bit of my life story. Some of you know, some of you don't know. I'm really grateful that I was adopted clear from Brazil, and that my parents wanted kids so bad that they were willing to do that, and to change the lives of 6 individuals forever. And they introduced us to their faith, and helped us to form a relationship with God and Jesus. And because of that, that's how personally I have been able to withstand and be comforted with the trials that I've had in my life. And it's funny, when John broke his neck, it doesn't really matter how old you are. You still want your mom. And I remember learning after John's neck was broken and that was going to be my reality. I was just like, I just want my mom. I just want my mom. I know I'm like 30, but I just want my mom. So I am grateful for my parents, and I'm grateful that they went to adopt and that they wanted kids so bad that they changed 6 lives forever. And, you know, we're all, you know, married except for Russell. He's still single, ladies. But we're all married, and we're having kids, and we're, you know, fulfilling our lives and our hopes and dreams. And it's all because I have 2 loving parents that wanted a family. So if you know someone that's adopted or looking to be adopted, share their story so that they can find happiness like I have. I know a lot of people that have been adopted and a lot of people that have adopted, and it's such a beautiful thing. And I'll always be grateful that I'm adopted and I have great parents. So now that I've just cried through this whole thing, thanks for watching. Thanks for loving me and loving my parents. And did you learn to speak Portuguese? Tudo bem. They said when I came over, I spoke like baby Portuguese. And so actually my cousin, Kim, if you're watching, Kim Roberts, she tried to really teach me English. So a lot of people say, you know, do you remember anything from Brazil? Because I was kind of 2.5, and I think I don't remember anything like at all. Like I don't remember anything at all. That I think because of the language barrier, because I spoke Portuguese, like I can't connect anything to any of those early memories. So I did speak baby Portuguese. Que linda is all I know how to say, because my dad said whenever I was around, they'd go, oh, que linda, like what a cute baby. And then, so that's all I knew. So my cousin taught me kind of how to speak baby English. And then I started learning English after that. But that was a great question. Thank you for asking. My daughter did go to Brazil on her mission, so she speaks fluent Portuguese, which I still have no idea what she's saying. Anyway, so thanks for watching. I'm sorry I cried through this whole thing, at least the end of it. It's so tender. It's so tender. Family is so tender. And I think that's why I'm like so big on family, and I share so much about my kids, because I'm just so grateful. Just so grateful that I have family, and I'm from a family, and that we live close to our family so that we can interact. And so love your family, love your parents, and love your kids. And I'm gonna go clean off my face. And you guys have a great day. Thank you for watching. Bye.